Welcome to the channel. If you love emotional billionaire romance stories, subscribe now and don't miss a single twist. Isabella Green was a simple girl with a heart full of dreams and a vow she had made to herself. She believed in love, not lust, and promised to save herself for the man who truly earned her heart. Working 2 jobs and caring for her ailing grandmother, Isabella had little time for distractions. Her beauty was undeniable, but her humility made her invisible to most wealthy men. Until the day she crossed paths with Damian Blake, a man who had everything money could buy. Damian was a billionaire known for being cold, calculating, and completely uninterested in love. He didn't believe in fairy tales. He believed in contracts, control, and results. But when he saw Isabella waiting tables at a charity event he sponsored, something stirred in him. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, and he knew instantly that he wanted her. Damian couldn't understand why Isabella lingered in his mind after the event. Her grace, sincerity, and warmth contrasted everything about his cold world. He had no interest in relationships, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. He tracked her down, intrigued not by her looks, but by her spirit. Isabella was stunned when Damian appeared at the diner where she worked her night shift. She assumed it was a coincidence, but he made it clear he had come for her. He sat at the counter, watching her every move, as if reading her soul. When he finally spoke, his words caught her off guard. "I want to make you an offer." She raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to be flattered or afraid. Damian smiled, not used to being challenged, but Isabella's eyes held fire. That night, Damian offered her something that sounded insane: $1 million. Not for intimacy, not for a date, but to spend a month with him. He told her he didn't want her body. He wanted her presence, her honesty, her company. He admitted he had become numb to his world and hoped she could remind him what life really was. Isabella was speechless, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or walk away. She had never been tempted by money, but her grandmother's medical bills were piling up. She asked him why her, and he simply replied, "Because you still believe in things I don't." Damian left his card and told her to think about it. No pressure. That night, Isabella prayed for guidance, torn between her principles and her reality. Love was sacred to her, but was this truly about love or something else? The next morning, Isabella visited the hospital and received devastating news. Her grandmother needed urgent surgery, and time was running out. She stared at Damian's card in her purse, her hands trembling with guilt and fear. What would it mean to accept his offer? Was she selling herself or saving someone she loved? She met with her best friend, who warned her that billionaires don't give without expecting something back. But deep down, Isabella didn't sense cruelty in Damian, only pain. She called him, heart racing, and said she would accept his offer on her terms. Damian was surprised, but he agreed without hesitation. A deal was a deal. Isabella set boundaries from the beginning. No touching, no expectations, no lies. Damian smirked and said, "Then this will be the most honest month of my life." The mansion was breathtaking, but Isabella felt like an outsider among the polished marble and chandeliers. Damian gave her the guest wing and complete freedom. He didn't want to scare her. Their conversations started awkward, but slowly, she began to see glimpses of the man behind the billionaire. He loved old jazz records, midnight walks, and reading alone in the library. Isabella was surprised to find herself laughing in his presence, despite her caution. She shared stories of her childhood, her dreams, and the promise she made to wait for love. Damian listened without interrupting, fascinated by her strength and innocence. She challenged him, called out his cynicism, and refused to be impressed by his money. For the first time in years, Damian felt seen, not for his wealth, but for his soul. And Isabella began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't the monster she feared. The days passed slowly, but something soft and warm began to grow between them. Damian started cooking breakfast for her, badly, but it made her smile. They argued over movies, bonded over music, and took long walks in the rose garden. One afternoon, he opened up about his childhood, cold, harsh, and loveless. Isabella listened with tears in her eyes, finally understanding his armor. She reached out, touching his hand gently, the first physical contact between them. It sent a shock through both of them, awakening something they couldn't name. Damian didn't try to kiss her, and she didn't pull away, but the moment lingered. That night, she dreamed of him, not as a billionaire, but as a man longing to be loved. And when she woke, she knew her feelings were no longer just part of the deal. Isabella's grandmother's condition stabilized thanks to the deposit Damian had made in secret. She didn't tell him, but she cried in gratitude the next day. Damian noticed her change in mood and asked gently, "Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head and said, "You've done more right than you know." They sat by the fireplace that evening, sipping tea, lost in quiet companionship. Damian confessed he had never brought a woman into his home, let alone his heart. Isabella looked into his eyes and saw the truth. He was just as scared as she was. She felt the urge to kiss him, but her promise echoed in her mind. Damian didn't push. He simply said, "When you're ready, I'll still be here." And for the first time, Isabella didn't doubt his words. Whispers of their strange relationship began spreading through Damian's elite circles. His assistant questioned whether he was being blackmailed. He simply laughed. Old flames and socialites grew jealous, watching a humble girl claim the billionaire's attention. Isabella felt the weight of eyes and judgment, but Damian shielded her without hesitation. He even walked away from a lucrative deal when a partner insulted her. The world thought he was going soft, but he knew he was becoming real. Isabella confronted him about the rumors, and he said, "Let them talk. I've never cared less." She realized how much he had changed, and how much she had changed too. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about him. And that terrified her more than anything. As the final week of their agreement approached, Isabella became quiet and distant. Damian noticed, but didn't pressure her, respecting the silence between them. She stayed up late, wandering the halls, thinking about what came next. The time limit was suffocating her, not because she wanted to leave, but because she didn't. Her heart ached with the realization that she had fallen for him. She feared what would happen when the contract ended. Would he let her go? Damian sensed her pulling away and worried he had broken the fragile trust they had built. One night, he found her sitting in the garden, crying quietly under the moonlight. He knelt beside her and whispered, "I never wanted to buy your time. I was just afraid to ask for your heart." And in that moment, everything changed. Thank you for following so far. If you're loving this emotional billionaire romance, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Stay with us. The story's about to take a turn you won't expect. As Isabella and Damian stand at the edge of something real, will love conquer fear? Or will pride and pain pull them apart forever? We're heading into the heart of the story now, where love gets tested. Your support helps us keep creating powerful love stories every week. If you believe in second chances, in love against all odds, this one's for you. Leave her in the comments if you're rooting for them. The morning after their emotional moment in the garden, Isabella felt strangely calm. She woke up knowing her heart was no longer hers. It belonged to Damian Blake. He greeted her with a soft smile and breakfast on the terrace, something she never expected. There were no grand declarations, just the quiet, comforting presence of someone who finally saw her. They didn't speak of what had happened the night before, but everything had changed. The walls between them had begun to fall, brick by painful brick. Damian didn't ask for more. He simply stayed close, respecting her space. Isabella admired the patience in his eyes, something rare in powerful men. Her heart fluttered at every glance, every shared silence, every accidental touch. She wasn't sure what they were yet, but she knew she didn't want it to end. But the world outside the mansion didn't rest, and neither did its whispers. Paparazzi captured blurry images of them together at a bookstore, igniting a wildfire online. Headlines speculated everything, from scandal to secret marriage to gold-digging schemes. Damian was unfazed, but Isabella felt exposed, vulnerable, and humiliated. She wasn't ashamed of being with him, but she hadn't been ready for judgment. She asked him, "Will I ever fit in your world?" And he answered, "You don't need to. I want to fit in yours." That night, he took her to a humble neighborhood cafe where no one knew his name. They laughed, talked, and ate greasy food with their fingers, and it was perfect. Isabella realized that Damian was shedding his world, piece by piece, just to stay in hers. And with every step, she fell deeper. Their emotional intimacy began to grow, but Isabella still held to her vow. She knew Damian wanted more, but he never pressured her, never crossed the line. Instead, he gave her space and time, showing respect that made her love him more. They would sit by the fire, hands nearly touching, hearts completely exposed. Damian confessed that he'd never cared for anyone the way he cared for her. He told her that love terrified him because it made him vulnerable. Isabella whispered, "That's how you know it's real." He looked at her like she was a miracle wrapped in human skin. That night, he kissed her forehead and said, "I'd wait a lifetime for you." She closed her eyes, heart pounding, and held his hand tighter. Meanwhile, Damian's board of directors grew impatient with his distraction. Investors complained, the media speculated, and rivals circled like vultures. One of his closest executives warned, "You're risking everything for a woman." Damian replied coolly, "I built this empire. I can rebuild it if I have to." He had fallen in love, and nothing else mattered more. Isabella, hearing about the chaos, begged him not to lose his legacy for her. He cupped her face and said, "What good is a legacy if I lose the only person who ever made me feel alive?" Tears welled in her eyes, because deep down, she felt the same. They were standing on the edge of something that could either break or save them, and neither of them wanted to let go. To escape the noise, Damian invited Isabella on a quiet retreat to a private vineyard. There, in the silence of the hills, they rediscovered simplicity and peace. They picked grapes, watched sunsets, and danced under string lights like teenagers. Isabella let herself relax, finally allowing the moment to matter more than the fear. Damian held her in his arms, his gaze burning with a love he no longer hid. She told him, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." He answered, "I was never afraid of you. I was afraid of what you'd make me feel." They shared a kiss, slow, honest, and filled with unspoken promises. But still, Isabella didn't cross the line she had drawn. She needed to be sure it was forever, not just a beautiful detour. Back home, her grandmother's condition worsened, pulling Isabella back into reality. She rushed to the hospital, Damian beside her every step of the way. The doctors were gentle but honest. It was a matter of weeks now. Isabella broke down, finally showing cracks in the armor she had worn for so long. Damian didn't speak. He just held her and let her cry. Later that night, he arranged a private nurse and full medical support at home. Isabella was overwhelmed by his kindness, not just to her, but to the woman who raised her. Her grandmother smiled when she saw Damian and said, "You found your one, haven't you?" Isabella couldn't answer, but her eyes said everything. And Damian kissed her hand like he already knew. One rainy evening, her grandmother asked to speak to her alone. With labored breath, she whispered, "Don't wait your whole life for perfect. Sometimes love looks like surrender." Isabella cried beside her, torn between her promise and her heart. The old woman smiled and said, "Love isn't what you save. It's what you give." That night, Isabella sat awake, thinking about everything, about fear, faith, and forever. She walked into Damian's room quietly, barefoot, heart trembling. He turned, surprised, and stood frozen at the look in her eyes. She whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." He stepped closer, touched her face, and asked gently, "Are you sure?" And she nodded, because for the first time, she was. They made love not like two people seeking pleasure, but like two souls seeking connection. It was tender, slow, filled with emotion neither had words for. Damian was gentle, treating her like something sacred, something irreplaceable. Isabella cried, not from pain, but from release, trust, and overwhelming love. Afterwards, they lay in silence, wrapped in each other, as if the world had disappeared. He whispered, "You've changed me." She replied, "You didn't need changing, you just needed someone to believe in you." They didn't talk about what came next, they didn't need to. In that moment, they were no longer pretending, no longer protecting themselves. They were simply in love. The following week, Isabella's grandmother passed peacefully, surrounded by love. Damian stood with her at the funeral, never letting go of her hand. The pain was sharp, but Isabella felt stronger than ever with him beside her. Her grief was deep, but so was her gratitude. She realized that love wasn't about waiting. It was about choosing every day. Damian stayed through it all, quietly, tenderly, as if he had always belonged. After the service, he took her to the rose garden and got down on one knee. With no ring, no speeches, just trembling eyes, he asked, "Can I spend forever choosing you?" Isabella broke into tears, whispered, "Yes," and fell into his arms. And the world felt right again. Thank you for staying with us. If you're loving Damian and Isabella's story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more passionate billionaire romance. Their love story is far from over, and the final part is about to bring all the emotions. From heartbreak to healing, from fear to forever, this romance will take your breath away. We've seen them go from strangers to soulmates. Now comes the test of forever. Your likes and comments keep these stories going, so let us know what moved you most. After the proposal, the world seemed to move in slow motion for Isabella. She was torn between the grief of her grandmother's passing and the joy of Damian's love. Wearing his shirt in the quiet mornings, she would stare out the window, dreaming of their future. Damian gave her space, letting her navigate the waves of emotion at her own pace. They began planning the wedding quietly, wanting it to be intimate and meaningful. But just as happiness settled in, a storm was already brewing on the horizon. An anonymous letter arrived at Damian's office, threatening to expose secrets from his past. Someone knew about his business rivals and unethical dealings from years before. Isabella sensed his stress, but didn't know the full truth yet. And Damian feared that the past he'd buried could cost him the woman he loved. Determined to protect Isabella, Damian tried to handle everything without involving her. He met with lawyers, strategists, and PR agents, fighting to keep the scandal contained. But Isabella wasn't a woman to be left in the dark anymore. She confronted him gently, saying, "We promised to face everything together." Damian, ashamed, confessed his mistakes, deals made out of desperation, shortcuts taken before he met her. She listened, heart aching, but eyes steady, because she already knew he wasn't perfect. "What matters," she said, "is who you are now, and who you choose to be with me." Relieved and overwhelmed, Damian held her like she was his only truth. But the outside world wasn't done trying to tear them apart. And the person behind the blackmail was someone much closer than they imagined. Isabella's old friend Natalie, once like a sister, had returned to town with a hidden agenda. Jealous of Isabella's new life, Natalie had sold information about Damian to the media. She justified it to herself, saying she was meant for small things, not this billionaire dream. When Isabella found out, her heart shattered, not because of the betrayal, but the cruelty. She met Natalie in a cafe and asked one simple question. Was it worth it? Natalie, with no remorse, replied, "You were always too good for your own good." Isabella walked away with tears in her eyes, but fire in her chest. She realized that love wasn't just about passion. It was about choosing your battles. And she chose to fight, for Damian, for herself, and for the life they were building. No one would steal her joy again. The press storm exploded, headlines screamed, investors panicked, and Damian's empire trembled. He was advised to go silent, disappear for a while, and distance himself from Isabella. Instead, he called a press conference and stood before the world with her hand in his. He admitted his past mistakes and vowed to never hide again. "I am not the man I was, and this woman is the reason why," he declared. Isabella stood beside him, glowing with quiet strength, no longer the shy bookstore girl. The internet lit up, half with admiration, half with hatred, but the truth was out. And with nothing left to hide, Damian felt freer than he had in years. That night, he and Isabella danced in their living room, barefoot and fearless. They had survived the storm, and now they were ready for the future. With the scandal dying down, their wedding preparations resumed with renewed purpose. They chose a small chapel in the countryside, filled with wildflowers and soft music. Isabella wore a simple, elegant dress her grandmother once dreamed of sewing. Damian cried the moment he saw her walking down the aisle. Their vows were personal, raw, and overflowing with love and history. "I don't need a perfect man," Isabella said. "I need you." Damian answered, "You didn't save yourself for love. You saved me with your love." As they kissed, petals rained down and the guests applauded through tears. It was more than a wedding, it was a victory. A victory of love over fear, truth over shame, and hope over everything. Their honeymoon was a quiet escape to a coastal village in southern Italy. There were no luxury yachts or paparazzi, just stone streets, local cafes, and late-night kisses. Isabella painted by the window while Damian read her poetry, the air warm with peace. They cooked together, got lost in alleyways, and laughed like teenagers in love. Each day, they found new reasons to be grateful, not just for love, but for the journey. Damian admitted that he no longer feared vulnerability. It had become his greatest strength. Isabella said she finally understood what love really meant: freedom with roots. They talked about children, family traditions, and building a life of meaning. One evening, under a full moon, she whispered, "I think I'm ready." And Damian smiled, already knowing what she meant. Months later, Isabella stood in their garden, holding a tiny test in trembling hands. Two lines stared back at her, faint but clear. Tears welled in her eyes as she touched her stomach, already feeling the change. She waited until dinner, heart pounding, then slid the test across the table. Damian looked down, stunned, then back up at her with tearful joy. "You're going to be the most amazing mother," he whispered. They cried together, laughed, and held each other like nothing else mattered. That night, he sang to her belly, a lullaby no one else would ever hear. Love had given them more than a story. It had given them a legacy. And the next chapter was just beginning. Pregnancy wasn't easy. Isabella battled nausea, mood swings, and fears of motherhood. But Damian was her rock, calm and unwavering, through every doctor visit and sleepless night. He built a nursery with his own hands, painting stars on the ceiling and tiny bookshelves on the wall. They spent evenings imagining what their child would be like: his eyes, her laugh, their dreams. When Isabella felt the first kick, she cried uncontrollably, overwhelmed with love. Damian knelt and kissed her stomach, whispering, "You're already my whole world." Their love deepened with every heartbeat, every gentle moment of anticipation. They didn't just become parents. They became partners in a new kind of creation. And even in the chaos of change, their bond only grew stronger. They were no longer two. They were a family. The baby came on a rainy spring morning, early but healthy. Damian never left Isabella's side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement through every contraction. When their daughter was placed in Isabella's arms, time seemed to freeze. She was perfect, tiny, loud, and beautiful, with eyes just like her father's. Damian broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the miracle of her. They named her Grace, for all the healing she represented. Isabella looked at Damian and said, "I saved myself for love, and this is what love gave me." He kissed her and their daughter, promising to protect them for the rest of his life. Outside, the rain turned to sun, as if the world was welcoming Grace, too. And in that moment, everything made sense. Thank you for watching this emotional journey of love, sacrifice, and second chances. Isabella and Damian's story reminds us that true love doesn't demand perfection, it builds it together. From a vow of waiting to a life of fulfillment, this romance touched every corner of the heart. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful love stories. Share your favorite moment in the comments below. We read and respond to them all. Your support helps us create even more touching, dramatic, and unforgettable stories like this one. Would you have made the same choices as Isabella? Let us know what you would do. Stay tuned, because next week's romance is even more surprising. Love always finds a way, and sometimes it offers something we just can't refuse. Until next time, keep believing in love.